So I found this article the other day, even though it's actually I wouldn't say old, it came out in 2018. And the article is called Sex Dolls Show Us What Men Want from Real Women. We should pay attention. That's quite the mouthful, isn't it? So, I'm not going to really give you guys a huge preamble like I normally do. Instead, what I'm going to ask you guys to kind of keep this thought in the back of your minds as you read through this article, right? I'm not gonna nitpick as much as I usually do because I want to be here all day. But as you read this article, I want you guys to keep in the back of your minds this question: what do sex dolls tell us about the relationship between men and women? Or, better question, what are sex dolls saying about women? Let's keep those questions in your mind as we delve into this article, shall we? Let's begin. I don't know why I did that. No matter how you package it, pretty it up, or slug. So that's how you spell that word. Yeah, you learn something new every day. Slug it off as harmless. The inanimate object that is a sex doll is merely a reflection of what men feel they are entitled to do to women. So, as it turns out, we will never be able to escape, or at least from feminists, we'll never be able to hear the end of how men feel entitled to sex from women. I will say that it's kind of not really used accurately here in this context, considering the fact that if you purchase a sex doll, which is an inanimate object, you are indeed entitled to do what you will with it. Because you purchased it. I mean, but we'll get into a little bit more in a second. Let us continue. All right. This is gonna be a bit of a doozy. News broke out last week that a sex doll brothel was opening in Toronto. While bylaws issued stalled Aurora dolls from opening in its proposed location, the setback is likely temporary. Silicone sex dolls are the most recent product to enter the market for men to fulfill their porn-fueled fantasies. Ugh, men like porn. Ugh. Now, I'm going to pause here to say this. Now, sex dolls and pornography, I guess, go hand in hand with one another in the sense that it is a form of pseudo-sex, in the sense that, like, you're masturbating with the idea that you're having sex. So you're tricking your body into thinking that you're actually having sex when you're really not. That's why you ejaculate, in case you didn't realize that, even though you probably did. So in the sense that they're not really separate things, but more different mediums. And what I mean by that is the principal point of the sex doll and viewing pornography is all for the same purpose. Which means that the individual who's using these things seem to not be able to just have regular sex with a woman. Let's remember that, because that's going to become very important later in the video. Let's continue. Advertised by Aurora dolls, each hole features different yet unique textures, ridges, and tightness to give you intense sensations that are impossible to achieve through real penetration. So these sex dolls are better than actual sex with a woman. I highly doubt it. I mean, I've never had sex before, but I highly doubt that these sex dolls are probably going to beat out the real thing. That is, of course, assuming that the real thing just kind of lays there and just takes it. Because then, if that's the case, well, really ain't much difference, now is it? Well, let's continue. How lovely is that? Another dehumanizing step for women who are already considered merely receptacles to fulfill every man's desires and fantasies. No doubt, they will soon be programmed to say, yes, sir, make coffee, and sweep the floor. See, that's something that is really interesting. She is projecting how she feels about femininity onto the whole of men. She's projecting how she feels what her role is, or how she thinks men view women. And now, is it true that there is a subsect of men who believe that you can only put your dick inside of a woman repeatedly and watch her as she cleans up the house that she lives in? Yeah, sure, but you'd be hard pressed to find them, because I've never met anyone actually like that. Apart from reading comments on the internet, I've never met anyone in polite society, nor ever had any friend that was genuinely chauvinistic to chauvinistic at all. I can't even say to that degree, but just like chauvinistic at all. The closest thing that I've ever had to a male friend, and look, I'm one person, maybe you've met a chauvinist before in your life, but the closest I had to that, the closest, and even then still isn't a good example, was one friend I had in college who just kind of wanted to have sex with hot girls. And you see how when I say the only thing that was closest to it is just the fact that he didn't really think highly of the girls that he had sex with, and he didn't really care about them afterwards. He just wanted, he just wanted to get off. That's the closest to it. And was it right? Not really, but he wasn't even a bad guy. He actually, interestingly enough, about him in particular, what I thought was hilarious was he always laid the foundation that of what he wanted, and the girl would always confirm, for better or for worse, we can talk about that some other time, that she was okay with the fact that, yeah, we're just having sex, this is casual. He verbally had this conversation with them all the time. So for as much as you guys might want to call him a fuck, I don't even think that, he's kind of fuckboyish, I guess, but he laid down the foundation. So any woman that was disappointed afterwards, I kind of feel is her fault. Maybe I'm just saying that because he was my friend and I love the guy, but I mean, let's be real. I really don't think he should have been doing it, my personal feelings, but if you lay down a foundation as simple as that, why am I defending him? This is kind of, my point is, that's the closest I've ever seen to anyone being genuinely discarding of women's feelings. And even then, see, the closest example I have isn't even a fucking example, is my ultimate point. So I don't know why I keep going into detail about it. My point is, I met a guy who liked having casual sex with girls, but he always laid down the foundation. So he was probably the best example you could get of I guess, a Casanova. I don't really like using fuckboy, I guess. But, I'm just going to leave that there. I'll probably talk about him some other time because he is an interesting guy. But my overall point is, her projection, I feel, just kind of stems from just a genuine misandry, or just genuine lack of knowledge, or lack of having good male figures or male friends in her life. Because the most men that you're ever going to meet are not going to debase women to this degree at all. Most of the time you get mild frustration with women, and maybe genuine true frustration with the lack of ability to meet women and try to date them. But all of the misogyny and the cruelty that you'll find, or the true dehumanizing of women, is anonymous people on a forum. And yeah, sure, they're real people. I'm not going to say they don't exist in reality. Where are they coming from? They're not computer programs, but they're still few and far between, and really stupid to project them onto most men, because they're not even a significant or even noticeable fraction of men. Anyhow, let's continue. Let's be clear, she says. There is nothing harmless about sex dolls. They represent the ultimate debasement of women. Now, my immediate question is how? Now, I think on the surface, on the one hand, you would be like, oh, well, if men are buying sex dolls, and that means, if they're buying sex dolls in lieu of trying to pursue women, then that means that they never cared about the woman, they just cared about having sex. And I think that would be fair to realize on the surface. And I think for the most part, that's kinda, I would say, a quarter of the truth. The ultimate goal of having a relationship with a woman is to have sex with her if you want to have children. And even if you don't want to have children, is to have sex with her point blank. Because if you're not trying to have sex with her, then she just becomes your friend. And there's no real reason to have a special friendship with a woman if she's just going to be your friend. You could have a best friend that's a male that you'll never have sex with, and you can have a best friend that's a female that you'll never have sex with. But if you're trying to pursue a romantic relationship with a woman, you're going to treat her differently, and you're going to try harder for her in its nature. And the reason why it's in its nature is because, well, if the ultimate goal is to marry this woman at some point, you're going to be trying to make people with her, and you probably want to make people with reasonable, women. You would hope. You would hope. You would hope. The ultimate point is, sex, of course, is a very important part of any relationship that's going to be trying to be formed. And if you think that men are just trying to skip the hassle of having a meaningful relationship with a woman in lieu of sex dolls, well then, what is that saying about women in general? Now, of course, let's just save that for later. Let's continue. I'm going to save that for the end of the video, okay? They represent yet another level of society's detachment from its responsibility to value, respect, and protect women. Hold on. This sounds mighty traditional here. Let me read that again because I don't think I got that one the first time. She says, she says, they represent yet another level of society's detachment from its responsibility to value, respect, and protect women. This website is called the Feminist Current, mind you, okay? Like, this is some mighty traditional shit going on here. Are you a conservative? What's going on? What's happening here? Value and protect. What? Okay, I'm making fun of her, but I mean, this is a little interesting here to find that a woman. I mean, honestly, naturally, would a woman want to feel that way in society? Yeah, obviously so. I'm not making fun of her for like the most obvious of obvious feelings a woman would have about her role in society and what she wants from men. That's kind of par for the course, you would think, if you like ever had a conversation with a woman ever. But I just find it funny that it's a feminist spouting out the traditional ideals, like as if she's not a feminist, man. Like, that was some crazy shit to read. That was hilarious. Sex dolls are a manifestation of porn culture and the male-dominant society's belief that it needs to do whatever it can to make sure men can have sex when and however they want it, no matter at what cost. Apparently the cost is going to be, I don't know, $350. How much do sex dolls cost? I think I saw a sex doll once that went up for $3,500. I said, man, you got me fucked up. I was like, man, ain't nobody going to spend that much money on a sex doll. That's crazy. So, I'm trying to. I think I might throw up a little image of the sex doll that I had seen on Instagram. Some Instagram model was like advertising it. I thought it was hilarious. Anyhow, so to actually address what she says, manifestations that men can have sex when and however they want it, no matter at what cost. Now, I don't think that this is a fair belief to put on the whole male-dominated society thing for a multitude of reasons, and we can talk about male-dominated societies some other time to really get a good definition. But to really highlight here, if we're talking about Canadians, especially Canadians, and like Americans, I don't really think that that's fair, considering the fact that men have to go through a lot in order to find a woman to have sex with. And I say a woman, not women, one. Just one. Just one. And hell, some men are married and they can't even have sex with that one woman that they're married with. I'm not sure if it's that men just want to have sex whenever they want on tap. I mean, sure, that would be great to have with your wife, I would hope. I'm sure maybe there are some guys that do feel that way. But is it a fair representation of men in general? I would say most certainly not, especially considering the amount of effort it takes to just have sex with one woman. I mean, the idea of being promiscuous as a man is considerably a lot of effort, and oftentimes I think it's kind of more trouble than it really is worth. But just trying to be with one woman, it just takes a lot more effort than it would take for a woman to be with a or even multiple men. Which isn't to say that you can't do it or you'll never be able to find a woman to be with, but it's going to take a long time to get there for a lot of men, especially if you're not a conventionally attractive individual. So do some guys want to skip the rigmarole of trying to, impress a woman in order to sleep with her, or skip the whole drama of a relationship? Sure. And I think you can leave them to their own devices. I don't really see what the problem here is, because it's not like men in general are going to stop trying to be with women, unless that's what your fear is. Let's just find out. It isn't a plastic doll lying underneath them. Isn't silicone a type of plastic? It is every woman who has ever turned them down. Every woman they can't have. Every woman who has been more successful, more praised, and more desired than that man can ever dream of being. And now that man can do whatever he wants to that woman. This is you're literally like complaining about a thought crime at this point. You do realize that, right? Like, okay, like he projects his fantasies of never being able to be with Jenny because Jenny has such a big fat ass and she's just so tall and beautiful and she only gets the best guys to be with. Okay, now he has a sex doll with a big ass that he calls Jenny. If anything, that's more of a problem for him mentally, and the fact that he can never move past Jenny, than it is a problem for Jenny, because Jenny can still find guys to be with her. Like if he is lowered himself to only be content with a sex doll because women didn't want him, that's more of a reflection of him than any woman. So how could you even begin to take that as an insult? If anything, that's an incredibly sad thing. He wants to be with real women, but he can't, so now he's with sex dolls. That's an admission of defeat, my friend. That's not... Why are you trying to kick a man while he's already down? There is a huge projection of his, what's malevolence, I think is a word, but his malice, that's really the word I was looking for here, that I don't really think is fair. It seems more that he is sad or really can't move past the fact that he didn't get to be with Ginny or Susan or, I don't know, Brianna, whoever the woman was. More so than like he's really trying to take his anger out on them. And maybe he might be, but it's not an anger that came out of nowhere. We'll extrapolate on that in a couple of seconds. So, make no mistake, this isn't a doll he's doing or maybe raping, choking, or hitting. You can't rape a doll because it's not a person and has no consent. It's all those women he can't measure up to. Okay, let's say that it is. In the words of Alinity. I mean, seriously, so what? Like, so what? Like, he's not actually hurting anybody. Again, I feel more for his mental health at the fact that he needs to have sex with a sex doll rather than, like, try to pursue a reasonable relationship. I mean, if he's trying to be with a sex doll rather than a real-life woman, let's remember that question at the top of the video. What is that saying about women? Let us continue. Maybe one day it will be a real woman. Well, that's a little much, don't you think? You really think that if the guy spent $3,500 on a sex doll, he's going to be trying to, you know, be spending any amount of his time with real women? Yeah, probably not. If I invest that much money in a sex doll, you best believe I'm not talking to a woman for the next 3 fucking years while I work on my bank account. You got me fucked up. Like, seriously, I'm not even joking. Like, sex dolls, they cost a lot of money. She goes, men do not have a right to sex. Fair. I mean, obviously not, considering the fact that we have to prove ourselves worthy to date women as if every woman we meet is fucking Mjolnir from goddamn Thor. But I mean, like, you know, if you're a man and you exist in reality, you kind of figure it out. That you have to appeal to the woman and get her to like you, or maybe not like you and get her to try to change you. Women are very complicated creatures, man, and it's going to take a lot more than this video to dissect how complicated and stupid their bullshit is, but whatever. The point being is that this is an obvious point of fact, and any man that really feels like he has a right to sex or is entitled are oftentimes rapists, and we collectively disdain rapists as a world. You know, I mean, you might find some countries that don't, but like in general, you know, most Western societies abhor rape. You know it, I know it. Let's stop pretending that people are not, that do not, like people just are overly accepting of rape. We're not. Feminists have worked for centuries to free women from the objectification that stems from oppression. You worked so hard only for Instagram to become a thing. Holy crap. It's a steep climb made even more difficult by the barriers thrown our way. Scantily dressed women on Instagram and little girls dressed in bras and sheer stockings are used as sex up advertisement for almost any product. Cars, beer, cigarettes, clothing, shoes, and lingerie. I was about to say shows, I don't know why. The more objectify the woman, the better the ad and the higher the revenues. You know what's really funny to me? It's really funny to me how a woman can look at a donkey pulling a heavy cart of material with a little carrot dangling in front of the donkey as he tries his best to eat it. She sees the donkey struggles desperately to move this luggage, and she says to herself, poor carrot. Pornography is freely available to all, including children. This is a little deep. Hold on, let me continue. With a simple search on a phone, technically a child can go to a pornographic website with their phone, but I mean they're not supposed to, nor are they advertised to. I'm like, you know, I mean, it's just you just, you know, enter your age, and any kid with basic mathematical skills can get onto a porno website. You know, unfortunately, for better or for worse, mostly for worse. But what's even deeper, which I might go into maybe one day, I don't know yet. Kids are kind of making their own pornography at this point. And I mean, like, kids, especially, this is more younger women. I have yet to see this happen to a young man, but there'll be lots of young women that will, like, record themselves or take pictures of themselves and then send it to some guy that they like. And then for all of no reason that I can ascertain, he will then spread this shit across the school. This has happened a lot. You know, I've seen this happen consistently. This is ridiculous, the amount this happens. But a lot of kids now call it exposing, or they'll, like, and they'll see, like, videos of this girl, sometimes in their class, of her, you know, just straight naked, unclothed, or doing sexual acts. Like, I mean, kids, they don't have to look for their own porn, man. Apparently, that shit will be airdropped to them, which is really sad and probably needs to be discussed some other time. But, whatever. It's violent, dehumanizing, and falls within the spectrum of torture. It can, but I mean, not necessarily so. I mean, there are porn categories like that, but to say all porn is like that would be ridiculous. It just is ridiculous. Now, I mean, are these women usually the happiest people in the world? Yeah, no. Are they normal? Yeah, no. There's probably some deep psychological problem going on with a lot of these women in porn. But is all porn categorized like that? No, of course not. And it'd be silly to say there is. I mean, there's stuff like facial abuse that exists. Like, okay, yeah, yeah, but apart from that, you know, come on, you got to be fair if you're gonna make it a criticism of pornography. Its victims are women and girls. Thanks to porn culture, the word consent has lost all meaning. Yeah, right. In pornography, women say no while tears stream down their faces. Yeah, because they're acting. You do realize they gotta, like, sign contracts, right? And negotiate prices. Well, some of them do, at least. Their pain and fear is real. And that's true sometimes, and you can see it in some porn videos, yeah, but all of it? No, that's ridiculous. Like, are we gonna sit here and pretend that these women don't have functioning cognitive systems and they can't make reasonable life decisions for themselves? Of course they can. If you are a pretty woman and you feel like you contribute nothing to society but your big ass or maybe your big tits, you know, I would say you should probably try to cultivate a skill long before you go into pornography. But if you feel like that's the only thing she can do, that was her choice. You can't then besmirch male-dominated societies because she was the one that decided to do it. Trying to take her agency away from her? I thought you were a feminist. What do you want about? Come on. The message received by men is do it harder, do it longer, and make her suffer more. Sometimes. Children huddle in small groups on school playgrounds during recess or lunch, watching degrading porn on the screen of that one kid who was allowed to bring a phone to school. I mean, I've never seen this happen, but maybe it can. I would hope that it doesn't. While young children are being educated about consent in schools, they are simultaneously getting contradictory messages from pornography and learning that women are disposable objects. If anything, they're getting this from women, but we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. Porn culture teaches girls that their value comes from the attention of men and boys, that men and boys give them. No, not having a father figure in their life teaches them that, but, you know, that's none of my business. In order to receive the attention, they have to morph themselves into an object for male pleasure. That does happen for a lot of girls, and I've talked about that extensively on my channel. I'll probably talk about that more in the future. But yes, this is more of an issue from when women do not have strong father figures in their lives, or when they have been abused by older males in their lives. It's not something that usually happens when your dad, cares about you. Usually. I mean, not necessarily the case, but usually. Boys have learned from pornography that they have a right to use and abuse women and girls. Some boys and men have been convinced that oh, hold on. Some boys and men have been so convinced of this that when told no by women, they become enraged and filled with hatred. No, yes, like rapists. Yes, like a rapist will be like that. And he needs to go to jail. Normal people, when they hear no, they might either try to convince you a little bit, they might tease a little bit, see if you'll change your mind, or they just take the no. That's what most people do. I'm just saying. Adolescent girls and young women are more objectified today than at any other time in history. The toys they play with, the clothes they wear, the movies and television programs they watch, and the online. She actually wrote it like that. And the online. And the online what? And video games, they play all present women and girls as disposable sex objects. Not necessarily. I mean, I can come with lots of examples, but that would pad out the video's runtime, and this video is kind of long as it is, so let's not do that. Sex doll brothels are a symptom of a larger problem of misogyny. The rights of men continue to supersede those of women. Yeah, but how though? First of all, these are silicone dolls and they're not women. They just are in the shape of women, but they're not actually women, so no women were harmed in the making of this silicone doll. No women were had sex with in the masturbation in the masturbation that was formed when this guy went to this brothel. Women are not, maybe women will be affected, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. We'll get there, don't worry. All I'm saying is that if a guy is having sex with a sex doll, he ain't hurting a woman. Or is he? We'll talk about that. Until women's human rights are respected, women will continue to be no more than disposable objects, except the only actual disposable object is just shaped like a woman, not actually women. Just saying. And what, after all, is more disposable than a silicone doll? You know, you can't double step like that. You can't complain that women are being viewed as objects when the actual object is being used as an object and women are being left alone to go to their own devices. When it is done being used by a man, it's cleaned and moved along to another user, which is kind of disgusting, honestly, when you think about it. Actually, there are lots of real-life women that do the same exact thing. That's none of my business, though. When it is broken down, torn, battered, and no longer useful, it is tossed out with the trash. Yeah, the only women that could probably feel that way are, like, legitimate prostitutes. And honestly, the biggest issue that sex dolls might have are to women who are prostitutes. Because when you can spend $1,000 on one woman, or one thing that you can do whatever you want with and don't have to worry about consent and all that, versus all of the rigmarole that is illegally, which is legal prostitution, by the way. You can go to jail for that. You can get trapped for that. You know, maybe it might make more sense to just buy a doll and then do it in the privacy of your own home and never worry about going to jail for that. Sounds like what life is like for many real women, doesn't it? For many real prostitutes, yes, and that's awful and horrible, and that's kind of its own topic, don't you think? Tell me again how silicone sex dolls are harmless male fantasies. Because they're harming a doll and not a woman. Seems a bit obvious, don't you think? We shouldn't be surprised that we are here in 2018. What is surprising and should cause outrage here is how so many people allowed us to get here. And those people that allowed you to get here are women. Now, I know. Some people might probably make the meme that I would say that most of society's issues are caused by women. And I don't really think that that's the case. I just only talk about the societal issues that are caused by women because lots of people don't. That's all it is. I mean, I could talk about other stuff, and I have plans to, but that's kind of really all it is. It's not really that I think women are the cause of all society's problems. I'm just talking about the ones that are caused by women. And this would be a problem that is indeed caused by women. First of all, let's break down a sex doll brothel to begin with. Do you know how disgusting that shit sounds? I'm just gonna leave it at that. I mean, the idea that you would go behind another guy, even if it's been cleaned, even if it's been disinfected and wiped out and all the spermicide on it, the fact that you would be using a doll that another guy just got done using probably 30 minutes before, I don't know, man. That just kind of strikes me as a little odd. It kind of strikes me as a little much. It kind of strikes me that if anybody has gotten to a point where they need to go to a sex doll brothel, that means that they can't be forming normal relationships with women. And why is that? Maybe he might be a crazy, creepy, awful guy. And if that be the case, then isn't it a good thing that he's taking his aggression on these sex dolls? Or maybe he's just a guy that's kind of tired of women's shit. Now, of course, we're talking about sex doll brothels here, but I've kind of expanded my idea to just sex dolls in general. Excuse me. Let's say a guy wants to be the sex doll thing in general, not go to a brothel, because that's a bit much. But he just has his own sex doll. What is that saying about women? Well, it's saying that it seems that it's a lot easier to be able to have sex or deal with a sex doll rather than it is to deal with a real life woman. That the effort it would take to try to date a woman or just have sex with a woman is gonna be a lot more, or is not worth as much, honestly, to these guys that are with sex dolls than it is to try to pump and dump a bunch of girls that they meet at clubs. And here's the thing, honestly, this is kind of a godsend to women, because if those men are removed from the dating pool, then that means the only men that would be left in the dating pool are men that actually want to form meaningful relationships with women. In other words, this isn't even a problem for women, but it kind of should be a bonus for women, because now the men that have elected to stay are probably more than likely enough are going to actually be trying to date them as human beings and as people. Maybe. I mean, I don't know, life's a little bit more complex than that, but I mean, just kind of on the surface of this thought experiment, you would think that that would be the case. But no, instead you find a feminist who is upset with the fact that men would rather be with sex dolls, or that men are going to be projecting while they feel about sex dolls onto other women, or that men are viewing sex dolls as women. But that's just totally absurd, and you kind of have to be making the assumption that these men lack the capacity to separate, or lack the capacity to think of women as human beings. And that seems to be more of her misandry than any reasonable thought ever. But I want to ask again the question at the top of the hour. If there are some guys who would rather be with sex dolls or rather purchase sex dolls, then it's either saying that these guys can't form relationships with women, which means forming a relationship with women has to be a difficult thing, or they're just a difficult person to try to date in general, or it's saying that a lot of women are trying to have sex with these women just are not worth the amount of effort it takes, especially if that woman's not going to put any effort into trying to date them back. There are a lot of really, really pretty women that are like just sexy and just beautiful and just take no effort in trying to actually be interesting, complex people that men want to be around. That's a real thing. And honestly, those women, in terms of the sexual conquest or the idea of trying to have sex with them without trying to produce child or a relationship or a marriage, kind of are the same. It's not fair to say they're the same, but I mean, they all have the same end of just laying down and getting the dick. So if it's a sex doll instead of those women, well then maybe those women should be encouraged to try to become interesting people and should try. And if these women don't want to try, well then that's their prerogative. But to besmirch guys for wanting to be with sex dolls because it dehumanizes women is just silly. Clearly it can and it doesn't, and if anyone has gotten to a point where they are dehumanizing women, well that's their own issue to begin with. If you're a woman and you feel insecure about guys going to sex dolls or sex robots, and that means that you very clearly think, one, that men are not very intelligent creatures and are not emotionally creatures that can think critically about the world, and two, you very clearly think that the only thing you have to offer is your vagina. And that is your problem, and you should probably seek to probably do more about your self-esteem than to project that men feel this way about you, when there are definitely the vast majority of men who actually want to form relationships with women. I mean, it kind of seems stupid to say, but I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot to unpack. There's lots of different subject matters that were crossed over in this video, and this video is long as hell as it is, so I'm going to end it here. I just hope you guys got something out of today's video, and if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. Yeah, shoot, go and click that comment in the comment box below. As always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.